Could you tell us a little bit about what you expect to get out of this trip? We know that there's been a mention of further cooperation between Taiwan and Europe on security issues, for example. What could that look like?
There are issues where we can learn a lot from Taiwan's experience. For instance, in dealing with information manipulation online and offline, Taiwan has had to put up with a lot of PRC interference. We have still Russia as the one country that interferes the most in our own societies. But by comparing notes, we learn from each other. Also, we want to stabilize the situation, contribute to stabilizing the situation in the Taiwan Strait by making it clear to everybody, including in Beijing, that Taiwan is not isolated, that Taiwan has a lot of friends around the globe.
Delegations from Europe often voice their support for Taiwan and say there's growing support for Taiwan in Europe in the face of aggression from China. But what could that support look like if China was to increase its hostilities on Taiwan?
Well, first of all, I think we should stop fooling ourselves. I don't believe it's adequate to assume that you can stabilize the status quo. China is trying to undermine it as best they can. And if we don't want to just watch from the sidelines, then we have to invest in more cooperation with Taiwan. And that means a lot of very practical things. It means, for instance, actively supporting Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations like WHO, WHA, ICAO, Interpol, UNFCCC, and others. It means enhancing trade and investment.
How do you think Europe is changing the way it deals with China in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
I strongly feel that the sad and bitter reality of Russia's imperialist aggression against Ukraine has highlighted to many Europeans this risk that there could hypothetically be an Asian repetition of the same kind of aggressive behavior by a revisionist power, in this case Beijing, obviously. So that has put Taiwan and the concern for the future of Taiwan's democracy much more on the radar screen of many political actors.
And Taiwan's president has mentioned her desire for a bilateral trade agreement between the EU and Taiwan, which has been hard to accomplish. To what extent is this a sticking point in EU-Taiwan ties?
I don't see it that way. If you just restrict your attention to the question whether we have a bilateral investment agreement or not, you could talk about stagnation because we're not having it, we're not getting it before the end of the year, we're probably not getting it next year. But underneath that level, there's a lot that is going on. The European Union has opened the level of discourse with the Taiwanese side. The president, when we met her, mentioned the resilient supply chain issues. I think that would be a good starting point.
You've been an outspoken critic of China and a vocal supporter of Taiwan for a while now. Could you tell us about what sort of repercussions that brings?
I must say, and I'm proud to be able to say, that the solidarity that I have received from colleagues has been overwhelming. So when the PRC decided to sanction 5 members of the European Parliament and the Human Rights Subcommittee of our Parliament, the overwhelming majority decided that we would put the newly negotiated comprehensive agreement on investment into the deep freeze, where it still is. And I think it will stay there.